Excellent. Excuse me. We have an excellent connection and we are good to go. What's up? It is January 13th, 2025. Monday, January 13th, 2025. And we are back to talking about building with AI coding and coffee. So coffee on standby. It is a bit early here, Pacific time. Not super early, but early enough to where I'm still drinking coffee. About 7:45, 20 till, top of the hour, Pacific time here in Southern California, where it is still windy. All right, so what are we going to get into today? Let's talk about Lovable. We've been talking about Lovable. I've been building in Lovable, experimenting with different setups. Last week we were primarily I have one big project and then I have a bunch of other things just as inspiration. I start building, so that's kind of what we're up to today. I'm gonna go ahead and just if you haven't already, consider subscribing to this channel here on YouTube, where I'll continue to do AI sort of related live streams. Whether they're all going to be coding specific or Lovable specific, that's to be determined. There are a lot of other cool solutions out there, and seemingly every week, almost every day, there's something new going on. So I may not always be building in Lovable, but for now, Lovable is my go-to sort of application. I am considering Cursor just as a sort of progression of coding, but I haven't actually fired that up yet. So we're going to stick with Lovable for now and see how much progress we can make just in terms of coding without actually coding. So if you're not familiar with AI coding, the idea is that you can prompt your way into building cool things like apps, web apps, and stuff like that. I'm just going to go ahead and push this broadcast out into the world. So I'm going to pop onto my channel real quick and then share this post. So that way, if anybody's interested in this kind of thing, then they can come along for the ride or revisit it later. Back to building apps with AI on my back to building apps with AI on my live stream. Back to building at Lovable with AI on my live stream. Okay, let's just push this. Let's not put too much thought and consideration into it. Let's just get it out into the world and then move on, shall we? So if you want to chat, feel free to connect with me on the Twitterverse. Twitter, just so used to calling it Twitter that it's really still hard to call it X, because I don't know what the active participating state of tweeting is with X. So you Xing? Like, what are you doing on Twitter? What are you doing over there? Check out my X. So yeah, I'm over there anyways. Gray's Reality, same here on YouTube, Gray's Reality, and we can chat about all things AI. All right, let's get into it. Let's pick up, let me just show you what I've been working on briefly. This was something that I just re-upped. So my subscription for Lovable just renewed. I'm on the launch, I believe it's the launch package where you get 250 messages per month. I have already used roughly, what is that, 39 monthly messages. And most of it was spent just sort of, I got an itch to sort of redo my layout here on my Soundscape generator app. So this app generates sounds and prompts based on images, things like that. And let me just load it up here so you can kind of see where we're at. So what it does, and here let me just go full screen, is I've got a bunch of different scenes. You can upload an image, you can generate an image with AI. This soundscape, for instance, was generated with AI. The prompt was something like, sea monster and battleship scene. I just wanted something that would be pretty dramatic in terms of sound effects. And so the major change that I committed was moving this sort of panel from the left to the bottom. I wanted it to be more like a traditional audio editor timeline, and I just noticed that this image now is way too big. Like, it doesn't fit on the screen. So the resolution needs to be adjusted. So these are the things that, like, as you make changes to the app, especially with Lovable in particular, I find that I'll do something and I'll try to isolate it and make sure that the changes are only impacting the thing that I'm working on, but I often find that stuff breaks behind the scenes, so something else will not work. And so, for instance, with this animation, when I moved it from the side panel to the bottom, I had issues with the blur effect as well as the transition and when it blurs and if it would blur. And now I've got an issue where, if you can see from, if we just go back to the home page, for instance, you should be able to see the entire sea monster. Like, the eyes are there, you know, you get this much more immersive view. But here, all of a sudden, the resolution is, it's like zoomed in. You can't even see the monster's eyes, so you just, you know, you get a big picture of his mouth. And you don't really get a feel for the experience. So that's something else that would need to be fixed, and something that we can do here on stream, or we can just start talking about other projects that I'm working on. But that's kind of like where I'm at. I try to simplify the timeline. I try to make sure that the slider controls are a bit more fixed in terms of position. So a lot of different things. The sort of prompts that are here need to be fixed because, again, they're sort of overlaying under. So I've got layers of these sound cards, and then some of them like will be on top. Like, this one forces it to be above, but on these sound cards up here, they all slide underneath the next sound tile. And so these are the things that I find pretty challenging in terms of getting prompting an explanation of what's happening. And in many instances, I will just simply take a screenshot and try to hand that over to Lovable so that Lovable can interpret what's going on, because otherwise it's very difficult to explain that problem. Now, the cool thing about Lovable is you can actually select different elements on screen, and so you can kind of guide it so that it generally, so it has a better understanding of what you're talking about. So that has been useful. Also, of course, attaching screenshots, so I'll just attach a screenshot and let it do its thing. Now, I notice when I scale, when I zoom in here, you can definitely see the resolution of the whole picture. It's only, it seems like when I go full wide that I lose that. So again, just constraints. Another constraint that I've been working on is specifically how to get this to render well on mobile devices. So spend a lot of time trying to figure out like usability on mobile devices in particular, because that's another challenge with just, you know, the user experience. Like, it looks okay, you know, you're building for desktop, everything's looking good, and then all of a sudden you take a look at the mobile and it's just not usable. Like, everything, like before I started working on mobile responsiveness, like these sliders were just crunching up, and so they're really tiny here, and you couldn't actually, they just became unusable. And it's part of the core experience, is being able to mix the sounds for any of these scenes. And so if you can't adjust the volume on any particular sound, it's like it destroys the entire user experience. So now it's I've got most of it worked out, like the volume, the essentials work, the playing of the sounds. For instance, if I fire up the scene, this is called Sea's Wrath Unleashed. Right, you've got general like battle scenes, sort of water, missiles, stuff like that. You can also mute the entire thing, and if you want to know what it's doing behind the scenes, it's just muting all the controls. All right, so this is all mobile responsive, and the last thing that I left off with was I had all these buttons. These action buttons were actually here, and prior to that I had them in a floating action button. Decided that that user experience I thought was a bit too aggressive. Like, just I'm trying to think about how people are going to use this app, and I really want to get this like out into the, like, publish a public version of this week. Ideally would be great, to have it just, you know, so that people can sort of experiment with it and give me some feedback. And if you're catching the stream and you want to get if you want to test it out, just let me know in the comments and or hit me up on X, Gray's Reality, here on YouTube and on Twitter. Yeah, so that's where we're at. Most of these buttons work now because I had to relocate them, especially on mobile. So on mobile, they jump up here instead of sitting here because, again, when everything was crunched, it sort of created a poor user experience. So I have on mobile made sure they render up there at the top. That way, again, when you're looking at your mobile device, the controls are here. And then if you want to still experience it, you can experience the soundscape. Also, things that I want to test with this app is the ability to make mobile edits. Like here, like traditionally with something like this, you would scroll to the left or swipe to the left, and then you can have options to delete sounds. So instead of having a trash can icon, for instance, you can just simply swipe left, and then you'd have the ability to delete the sound. So the only problem I have right now is the add sound feature here. This action button no longer works, and that's what I've been trying to fix. It does work in the mobile version, so if I click add sounds, I can generate the sound, search for a sound, search for water rushing sounds. Hopefully the sound feature still works. Yeah, so rushing water, and then it takes up the interface. It takes up most of the mobile, so it still looks decent on mobile, and on desktop it would look like that. So that still works pretty well. Probably something I'm going to play with eventually, but these are the things where I'm trying not to get caught up in the minutia of things and just work on the bigger picture stuff, you know, like the essentials. So right now this add button doesn't work. I've been going back and forth, and this is the thing that I guess if I had to nitpick, something with Lovable would be like I've spent, I don't know, probably half a dozen or so more messages just trying to get this dialogue button working again when it was working before. But as soon as I tried to go responsive, like now it works here, but it doesn't work here, right? This does nothing. And so I'm trying to work out that kink with the thing. So that's the latest changes. Again, sort of the primary project for the weekend was just moving the previously this action here was on, and let me just open this in a new window. Let's see if we can launch this in a new window so you have a better idea of the user experience here. In a full screen sort of view. So you've got this, and you know, you'll go here. And I'm not sure again if I like the what happens right there out of the launch. So if you notice, for instance, again, that button doesn't work, so we'll have to go, see, I can't even get back to, again, another issue with usability is now that the floating action button and then the add sounds, this was my primary, actually, no, I can get there back there, never mind. I need like a dashboard button, something that's a little bit more accessible, right? So like up here with logout, I need like dashboard, quick, easy way to go home. Right now, the way I do that is I've got this new scene button, which will then take you back to the main page, but it's not the most intuitive button, and most people wouldn't know that's how you get back to the home page. I need something a little bit more universal in terms of the language, web language. But this experience here is what I'm talking about, I guess, is that when you click into any of the scenes, there's kind of a disconnect, because now I have a pretty strong blur effect on the background, and there's no sort of like context on the screen. You don't know what you're looking at, and so that will need to be addressed as well. When it's down like this, it's easy to understand, but then you wouldn't know that there's sound panels here. So this is something that needs to be fixed because it's only so-so. The user experience is kind of poor. I'll probably go away from the aggressive blur, maybe even put a description up here or something that, you know, tells you what to do here, because this is not great. But otherwise, stuff works. So this is Frozen Tranquility. I guess the bigger picture idea is, you know, to be able to have these immersive soundscapes and then have the reason that I sort of went with this bottom panel instead was I wanted it to act more like a, you know, I figured that once there's more scenes, more soundscapes that are been built out and sort of curated and people have, you know, made, that I'd love it to be more like a channel, like with like TV style, like that you can sort of like switch between scenes. So this is like Frozen Tranquility, and then maybe there's like channel like controls down here, so you can sort of like navigate. And if I wanted to switch from like, so on the user experience, they wouldn't have control. They wouldn't be able to get in here. Only the creators would be able to have the ability to adjust the sounds. Once the soundscape has been published by the creator, I want other people to experience the way the creator intended, right? So it would be a minimal view for the user experience. If you're not logged in, or if you're just, you launch this player, then you can just sort of engage with the soundscapes and then sort of change the channel like it's like TV, like you would just click next or random, and then it would take you to something, like you would teleport all over the place, and then the sounds would play. It'd be like radio stations kind of thing. Anyways, so that's the idea with that. Yeah, so I wanted it to be more like a minimal player down here with minimal controls. That's Frozen Tranquility. Again, the user, if they were just here, they could just, again, play, pause, and then like next, previous scene, next scene, that kind of thing. All right. What else can I tell you about the project in its current form and state? These are all saved soundscapes. Every user would be able to save their own. There would be some sort of public gallery that still needs to be built. All these soundscapes would need to be indexed in a way that, they can be found. I think that's going to be key. And then, of course, the public sort of sound gallery, like the actual sound catalog that gets generated from all these sounds, right? So a couple other small cues, small tweaks that were made. Status. So you notice there's a subtle difference between this play button and this one. This just means that sounds have been generated already. So if we go back and create a new scene, for instance, if we just went and created a new scene, let's just use this truck here. It's going to go ahead and create the new scene. It's going to interpret, again, through vision, AI. It's going to come up with the sounds and prompts for this image. So again, if we just take a look at the image, and if you try to, conceptualize what the sounds would be, if you're, thinking about this, you would have like truck sounds, exhaust sounds, maybe some rumbling, maybe some forest action happening, maybe some chainsaws in the background of like, I don't know if this is deforestation or just clearing trees down or whatever the case may be. You would have those kinds of sounds, right? And so this is called Mountain Trail Journey. It creates that title, and then it creates these sound effects, right? And so right now it's just doing 4. It's limited to 4. That's just by design. I didn't want it to be too complicated. So Vision is looking at this image and going, what kind of sounds are in here? And it said engine hum, forest breeze, birds chirping, and gravel crunching. Right? So it's kind of like the base layer, base foundation, and then from there you can add sounds, right? So again, if it worked, you can add sounds. And then you notice all these icons don't have, they all have the same play button because they have not yet actually been generated. So if I click engine hum, that's when it's going to make the API call to 11 Labs. It's using their text-to-effects endpoint. It's going to look like it's loading, it's buffering. I don't know if that's a good user experience, but once it loads, then you've got engine humming. Right? So now you have a layer of sound, and then you can go in here, and if I press pause, you'll notice that the icons are slightly different. That way you know this sound has already been generated, and once it's been generated, it plays automatically. And of course, as we move forward and grow the catalog, I'd like to repurpose existing sounds so that when image is done, it can search through the sound catalog and then just fetch like pre-existing sounds that relate to the scene. That would be cool, because then I wouldn't have to rely as much on generating AI or generating new sounds. But it's kind of hand in hand, because new sounds mean more experiences, a bigger catalog, that kind of thing. So let's just run through these real quick. Let's create the forest breeze, let's create birds chirping, and let's create some gravel crunching and just see what it sounds like when it's all built out for this scene. All right, so forest breeze. Got birds chirping now, some gravel crunching. Let's add the engine hum back. And let's just see, if that's what this sort of picture depicts. And I would say it's pretty decent, you know, for something that hasn't been adjusted at all. Like that adds some depth to the scene. Like you have like a foundation, you have a starting point, and then from there you can build it out, right? Other features that I want to include is the ability to, you know, time something. You know, the idea was by moving to this timeline, you could adjust it. Now the volume works as well, so if you want the forest breeze to be a little bit stronger, bird chirping to be louder, or maybe the engine hum is too much, or you want more engine hum, less gravel crunching, more gravel crunching, then you could do so. Right? So that's the basis. That's kind of where we're at with the project. It took a while to get everything from the left to the right, but I thought this was just more traditional, like more of, you know, more traditional. Just in terms of audio editing, in terms of the UI that most people are more familiar with, I just wanted to go to something that's a little bit more scalable and would allow me to put more options on these sound cards. Right now, like this volume slider does not need to be this big. Like, and I just realized that when I muted that. See, that's another user experience. These are things that like would get me caught up typically, but I'm not trying, you know, I'd prefer not to focus on them at the moment. And then we could just save the scene. So we click the little save disk here, and it says save scenes. And then once we go back to here, it should show up here as, you know, edited less than a minute ago. All right, so that is where we're at with that. And yeah, so those are the key things that I want to fix, update, etc. With this project, but it continues to evolve. Like I said, if you've seen any of my other streams, I wanted a project that sort of like was a bigger project, and then also leave some opportunities to work on some smaller things with Lovable or any other AI coding adventures, right? So anything else any other projects that come to mind, things that pop up. I was most recently looking at some threads over the weekend, specifically as it related to like building, using O1, ChatGPT or OpenAI's O1 model, and that you have to prompt it a little bit different in terms of structure and things like that. But I thought it would be useful for one of these other projects that I'm working on. So if we just duck out of here, go back to the scene, and then we'll just go back to the home page for now. I had brought this up in a previous one. Santa's Workshop. Hold on. Before we talk about Santa's Workshop, let me just finish with some trailing thoughts on the sound components. So last week, I think on Friday, I was trying to build out, I was trying to understand the capabilities of visualization, audio visualization, right? So there's a Soundscape app, and I want, you know, there is no like actual visualization, no waveform analysis, anything like that. Before I wrecked this project by experimenting with it, I wanted to see just within Lovable how easy it was to build out components for the soundscape, right? So I went through a few different iterations. I've got 4 projects that I spun up, attempting to build out different little UI components for visualization, right? So it started with this one. I think this is where we left off. This is one of the first ones that I queued up last week. Again, you can upload a sound, zoom, that kind of thing. So let's see if any of these still work. Let's go with this. All right, so some of these still work. Some of them are in broken status. The idea with this one is that you can loop endpoints. So if you play here, you would be able to grab this handle and loop it. But you can see like it is just buggy. And so this one I got to a point in the project where I'm like, this is, it's going a place that I didn't want to go, right? So I was like, all right, let's spin up another one. And so if we go back, I spun up another version of this, which was, I believe, this one. This was another way to preview sounds, sort of different take on it, different UI, that kind of thing. So on this one, again, you upload the audio, click upload. Did it work? I don't know, something feels like the project reloaded right there. All right, so this one deploys a different timeline. Okay, and so it loads the effect. I do like the waveform, but then like it's stuck. Like the playback head is stuck here. I don't know if that's because of a crossfading duration or what's happening, but again, this got to a place where I was like, I spent enough time. Like I'm just trying to understand the capabilities of like using different libraries. Like I think Wavesurfer is one of them. Wavesurfer.js is a library. It's also using tone.js or trying to mix and match between the two of them. And so what I'm trying to do is figure out like a prompt that will allow me to build just a component that I can then later add to my project. So if we go back to the dashboard again, we'll just go through a couple other iterations of this thing. This is another version. I think this may be a more simple one. Actually, they all sort of have a similar, let's load this up button. This one does not work at all. Like this one has errors, and the upload button works, but it clearly doesn't load any audio. So that one had issues, and then let's see, and then this one. This is the final version. I think actually this is the UI that I liked best because it's like super minimal, and I think the way I started with. So again, just food for thought. As you're going through these projects, like eventually I get to a place where I kind of like know, based on the output, based on what Lovable is giving me, where I need to constrain my prompt versus like leave it a little bit more open. And so this one is a super simple audio editor that allows me to loop an endpoint audio file seamlessly. Should have an adjustable in-out points as well as a volume envelope control to smooth out the loop transition, right? So I think this one works reasonably well. Could be wrong. This one could be broken too. Okay, actually this one is not too bad. So this one does, I think, what I ultimately wanted to do. Sorry, just kidding. Just right when I said it. It's supposed to loop. Oh, here's where I left off. Because this one will loop. By default, it only plays once through because you have to adjust the endpoint, right? And so now you can see there is an adjustable endpoint as well as adjustable loop point here. So if you play this, it should now loop between the endpoints. And so that was kind of the critical piece that I wanted. That way, if like you wanted to go and adjust your scene, like the sound effects, you'd have an easy way to sort of like cut from one part to another. Right, and then behind the scenes, there is some additional processing happening. It's looking for like, I think in this one, anyways, it is looking for some, what is it called? Some crossfading that's happening behind the scenes to sort of like make sure that the clicks and pops don't happen. I forgot what it's actually called. Oh, zero crossings, first to eliminate clicks. So that's happening behind the scenes. You can't really tell, nor can you really adjust it as from a user perspective. But I just think from a usability, like this is probably the most usable component that I was able to build last week. So you can kind of see again how I iterated through them. This one's still not perfect, but it is probably the closest to what I ultimately want to add back to my Soundscape generator app. And so hopefully I can sort of repurpose this. It'd be nice if I can store this as like a sort of build out components in Lovable and save them, and then like reference them like in other projects and be like, can we add the audio loop editor to the Soundscape generator app? And then it would look at it, it would remember how we configured it, remember the components, and then basically import it into the other design or into the other project. Yeah, and so this one worked reasonably well. And also the timeline's super simple. I think it's intuitive. I didn't realize you can actually drag this timeline. That's pretty cool. This is kind of stuff that I would expect in like a fairly modern audio editor, honestly. It looks like you do it in real time too. So it's got some, it's just a matter of sort of guiding it in the direction that you want. And again, how you guide it is you sort of like, you prompt and then you get a result, and then you sort of either add to it or take away and just refine it. And so it's just a lot of iteration. And I think ultimately prompt engineering is a bunch of that in a nutshell. It's just sort of iterating your prompts, either adding to them, restructuring them, simplifying them, or making them more complex, right? More structure, less structure, that kind of thing. All right, and so that is in fact, the evolution of the audio thingy, right? I'm just going to take a quick sip of coffee. Again, friendly reminder to, if you haven't already and you catch this stream, feel free to leave a comment below, just letting me know you are here. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's a new channel, so I'm trying to stream pretty consistently. Managed to get through last week, even amidst some of the extracurricular activity happening here in and around Southern California this past week. Still managed to get the streams up and running. So I am picking up from where we left off last week. So hopefully continuing to just knock down and continue publishing new content. Outside of the live streams, I'd like to be able to somehow revisit some of these live streams and, sort of edit them down a little bit so that they're more consumable. Maybe put them on the front end of YouTube where, we've got actual video content as opposed to just strictly live streams. And so what I'm hoping is also to maybe get away from the sort of jumping straight into a project and just sort of like working on the project day in and day out. I do realize that would be the best way to make more progress with the individual project, but I think as a user, you probably want to see what Lovable's capable of. And I'm at a place with some of my projects with the Soundscape thing where I'm just sort of like into the weeds a little bit. And I think, that as a user is probably not where you want to spend time with me, if at all, is in the weeds. You want to see more of the larger sort of like different things that you can do with Lovable, different things that you could build. One thing I really want to do is just going back to the O1 prompting and using some of the other models that GPT has available, and just other models in general. I'd love to start exploring outside of like OpenAI and some of the other stuff out there that's available, in terms of like other APIs that are available to tap into and use different models that I can use instead of just relying so much on OpenAI. But this Santa's Workshop thing, I'd love to repurpose this one into maybe some sort of journaling app. And the idea here was that you could talk to Santa and you can give it a wish list. And again, I sort of explained this project in the past. It started as Zoltar Speaks. It was a fortune teller machine. And then through the holidays, I decided to remix it and turn it into Santa's Workshop, where you can go and talk to Santa's helper. And, I thought it'd be fun for like kids and that kind of thing. But, or adults too. Everybody has a wish. And so you talk to it using the WebSocket. So this produced this using the WebSocket. Basically, OpenAI has the real-time chat now where you can do audio chat and through a WebSocket. And so this works. The problem is I can't really save any of the context from the conversation yet. I haven't figured out how to store that information to a database or recycle it or do other things with it. So right now you can talk to it, but that's about it. It opens up the connection. You have a real-time conversation with Santa's helper, and that's it. And then you close the session. And so that's probably something I want to repurpose into more of a journaling app, and then push that into like one of OpenAI's larger models, like the reasoning models, to give it a whole bunch of context, right? Because I figure if you could talk to something like this, like through real time and store the conversations, then you'd have a whole lot of context that you can then hand over to like a larger model or a more capable reasoning model like O1. I don't have O1 Pro, but I'd probably start with just O1, hand over the entire context, and then have it try to break it down in a meaningful way. Give me some sort of like feedback, critique regarding my journaling, right? Whether I'm talking about sleep or my the Whoop app and like the fitness band, my fitness stuff, anything business related, personal, that it could then use all that information and give me something helpful, constructive, feedback, that kind of thing. So that's probably something this week that I will look at. And if there's anything, that you want to see get built, I'm still working on, I just talked about Whoop. And so Whoop is a fitness band that I'm wearing on my wrist. If you're not familiar with Whoop, it's basically like a fitness tracker, like an advanced sort of fitness tracker thingy. If you have an Apple Watch, you probably get similar data. I had an older Apple Watch, which, I've been using forever, but it didn't really do sleep tracking very well or at all. It wasn't old. It's like a Series 3. And so I was at a point where I either upgrade my watch or try something like this. And I found that the Whoop has a pretty basic API as far as I can tell. You can get some metrics out of it, like the ones that you see on screen right now. So that is my recovery score. That is my daily strain from yesterday, and that is my heart rate from yesterday. But this is as far as I've got. I still can't get sleep in here. I'd like to bring in some activities in terms of like my workouts and stuff. And it's also kind of siloed, right? I find that like my data is interesting to look at, but it would be more interesting to like have friends that maybe have the Whoop band, and that there's some sort of like, you can look at like not like I don't necessarily need to know their sleep patterns per se, but it would be cool to have some sort of like scoreboard, something that you can have like some context, like because I did not know. I had to ask somebody else that was wearing a Whoop band how good their recovery scores were, because I noticed that my recovery scores were pretty poor. Also, but my sleep is also not the greatest, right? My sleep performance is what it's called. My sleep performance isn't great, and so I'm just curious how that affects my recovery score. And apparently with the Whoop band, it's pretty heavily biased towards sleep. So achieving like perfect sleep scores and things like that. And historically, like I don't get the greatest sleep. I get, maybe six-ish hours average. Whereas like, I think more of a better sleep score would be in the 8 range, like 8 hours of sleep every night. And then of course, depending on what other activities you do, it can then dictate your recovery score. So I would just like to have some other context in terms of like how my recovery is compared to everybody else. And with a fitness band, it's so personal that all the data is specific to you, which usually makes sense. But these are the instances where I'd love to have like, if you